Greetings, I'm Peter Denning, host of your Harnessing AI class here. We're here to explore the implications of AI in the Defense Department domain. Our discussion of this topic has three main emphasis. One is, what are the machines that we use that are available to us to do AI? Second is, what are the main application areas in which we are applying AI? And third is, what are key issues in strategy, power, and ethics in AI? So today we're going to have a discussion with Professor Ryan Maness, who is an associate professor in the DA department, Defense Analysis Department. And he's going to be talking about artificial intelligence implications for strategy and power. And as you'll see, he has a lot to say about relationships with China in there.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
For DA students and whoever else, I also have a lot more to say in my DA 3105 class if you want to take that. It's cyber information strategy, a lot of AI integrated into that, but it's a social science class. You won't have to do any math if that matters. And so I'm a PhD in international relations, so my interests are more geopolitical than they are technical. And so with the advent of emerging technology that's just going at rapid speed, AI being one of the more focal points of that, you have to get interested in this kind of stuff. So I came in here almost a decade ago as a cyber strategy person, but now it's evolved into cyber information, AI, and other parts of technology, and how do we integrate that not only into military operations and tactics, but geopolitical strategy. What's that all mean? So some three overarching questions you keep in the back of your mind. You don't have to answer it yet, but just keep that in the back of your mind. So how does the U.S. DOD think about, I'm sorry, DOD, I'm just so used to saying DOD, I'm just going to keep saying it. Don't tell on me if that's going to get me in trouble. How does it think about AI for military operations? One thing I want to point out is, this is not a book sell, but I have this coming out in about a week. We look at how technology is being used in the war in Ukraine, and I think everybody should pay attention to that. I'll bring some lessons from that war into some of this, but there's more on that in that book. So that being said, how is AI affecting geopolitical strategy and power? What we're going to focus on today is more of the two superpowers, that being the United States and China. Obviously, the European countries, Japan, Korea, Russia, they're all getting in on the AI game. But there's two major powers that are really far and above and beyond the rest. So we'll kind of concentrate on that, and that being our biggest geopolitical adversary anyway. So that being said, we're a democracy. We have a bustling private sector. It's only 60, 70 miles north of here. And it's profit driven. Whereas China, authoritarian, communist, the government dictates pretty much anything that the private entities do, and so they have more of a say and a sway over how their AI policy evolves. So what does that mean in this overall geopolitical competition? Who's got the advantage? Does a free society that has to, where the government and the private sector sometimes don't get along, will that spark better innovation and put the U.S. on top, or does China's top-down model of authoritarianism, does that give them the advantage? Just something to keep in the back of your mind. All right, there's a lot of words here, so I just kind of bullet pointed this, and you probably have learned about this already from other lecturers, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I remember BJ, so AI, if given the right data, can help military commanders with the threat environment and the battlefield environment to help them make better, faster battlefield decisions. And if they have the better data than, say, China, and we're going to war, then that gives you the battlefield advantage. And so that's the big thing with AI. Dr. Strasser really kind of teed me up a little bit that if we don't get in on this, China's already in on this. So if we don't get in on this and apply it our way, then yeah, we're going to lag behind. One thing that I look at, because I'm in the DA, we have a big information strategy contingent of the department. What GPTs, what LLMs, what they're doing for the information environment. AI, ChatGPT, you probably all have played with ChatGPT, I'm guessing. It's hard not to. You can make these things sound really human, answer prompts that sound more human than you would think, and deploy these on Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, whatever, and have them engage with people over a topic. This is really going on over the war in Ukraine. China's using it for the issues over Taiwan, and so the fact that geopolitical adversaries, Russia and China mainly, can scale influence operations now with these GPTs and deploy them on social media. I'm not on social media because I just think it's horrible for mankind, but a lot of people are, and so you're not going to know whether or not you're arguing with a human being or not. 10 years ago, we could catch Russian trolls sometimes because they learned English in the Queen's version, and so they claim they're from Texas, but then you use British English, and then we're like, hey, you're not a real Texan. AI is a lot better at sounding American than Russians are. You just tell it what to say and you program it. So getting to the war in Ukraine, you guys probably all know that low cost and mass produced drones are playing a big part in this war. I don't know if you've heard of the Delta Initiative in Ukraine, but it's a whole of society drone initiated project where what the Central Command does at the Delta Initiative, it takes information used by drones, not only by the military, but also by civilians, to find Russian positions, digest that data, and then make military decisions based on that. So they've been really innovative in this kind of thing. And the Delta Initiative, you could just probably Google it, and the Ukrainian government has a website in English about it if you're interested. Ukraine had a big advantage in this field for a while. Russia's since caught up. They have something called Rubicon. They've kind of shed off their kind of more rigid military structure since they've been getting their butt kicked for the first 2 years, and now they're getting a lot more innovative, and they have caught up to Ukraine in this space. And so we have really kind of a drone standoff here. So what we see in the drone warfare is you create a capability, EW and just observations. You counter that capability, the adversary adjusts, adapts, and that could go on that could take within a week to a month. But the fact is that they have to adjust these things on the fly. What I'm worried about here in the United States is that we have big contracts with big companies where if you have a problem with your drone, you're going to have to say, hey, Lockheed Martin, my drone's not working anymore. Like, okay, we'll get you a fix in 6 months. Can't do that anymore. So how can this U.S. military, and I'm in the department where SOF is the main focus, and so I think SOF could play a big role in this in terms of our military, but weaning off being more dependent on multi-million-dollar contracts and maybe producing a lot of things in-house. Just a suggestion here, and this could be a good school to do that. Kristen Solis at the Robo Dojo Lab. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Check that out. It's on the north end of Root Hall. It's our tinkering lab that DA has that deals with these kinds of low-cost drones. So, Ukraine's been able to blow up $1 million tanks with $200 drones. Just think about that. How much does a Reaper cost? Like 30 million? I don't know, something like that. So yeah, keep that in mind moving forward. Okay, so when it comes to AI and the great contest of not only the information environment, but the cyber domain, what might we see? So can AI write better malware than a human being? And if it can it adjust once the malware is patched? That being said, can AI assist in cyber defense? Meaning, can it catch these pieces of malware before they infect systems? Can it cause an offense-defense balance where we might even see a stalemate in the cyber domain because of this AI? Or will it just get too dangerous and messy and out of control where unintended consequences and the fact that you're taking the human out of the loop, will that lead to unintended escalation where a war might break out? These are just questions that they could go one way or the other. So cyber capabilities could be scaled and sped up and then lead to unintended consequences, or they could balance. If China can deploy offensive cyber operations with AI on the U.S., could the U.S. Counter that with defensive-minded AI to keep that malware out? But another thing it also does, the cyber domain's done this even before AI has been a thing. It's more diffuse in in power. You can be one guy and punch above your weight and really wreak some havoc in the cyber domain. So smaller states, rogue states, North Korea is funding its regime through cyber means, through crypto theft, crypto scams, all that kind of stuff. So it's heavily sanctions. They don't really have a tax base, so how they make money? Kim Jong-un found this very lucrative space. And then what about those who might mean us harm in the non-state realm, terrorists? We haven't really seen cyber terrorism per se yet, because cyber doesn't have those effects that a guy running into a mall might with an explosive bomb on his chest that actually has that shock effect. But will AI assist in more damaging cyber operations that a terrorist could deploy and then wreak havoc, like blowing up natural gas pipelines or knocking out the lights in the eastern seaboard? So the eastern seaboard power grid, I think it powers about for 200 million Americans. If that thing's knocked out for 2 weeks, not only will people die, like the elderly and the sick, but imagine a society that's used to power without power for 2 weeks, and the stability of that society. And so that's something that's always in the back of our minds if that happens. China and Russia, I'd argue, are kind of restrained from that because we could probably do it to them, but terrorists don't have those kinds of restraints. So that's something moving forward. Can AI affect that? Okay, so what has the US and China done recently? Who has the advantage in this AI space? You probably read some of this in the news. So the last administration passed the US Chips and Science Act. In a nutshell, what that did was try to reshore fabrication plants, build the NVIDIA chips and the semiconductor chips that are needed for AI back here in the US. I don't know if you knew this, and if you have any Taiwanese colleagues, but Taiwan produces about 70% of those chips. And so Taiwan has that outsized advantage in that it's a very important little island that produces these chips. And so hedging our bets on whether Xi Jinping is going to do something about Taiwan in the near future, I think we're saying we need to maybe bring some of that capability home in case that does happen, because China will take that capability over. Taiwan's actually explicitly said, hey, if you invade us, we're going to blow these factories up. So that could be a good deterrent for them. So that being said, we have export controls on the fancy chips, on the A100s, H100s. Not allowed to export those to China, but NVIDIA has exported I guess, and this is, I don't know if this is on purpose or because somebody thought it was funny, but literally they're called the H2O chips. They're watered down versions of these fancy chips that are able to go to China. China doesn't like that very much, so they're really hitting hard on developing their own NVIDIA top-notch chips. And so we might see them catch up to us in that space. Another advantage China has is they have most of the minerals that you need to make these things. So they have an ace in their sleeve. So that being said, we need the rare earths. They need the fancy chips. There's kind of a standoff there. Where that goes, we don't know. We know the president and Xi Jinping met in South Korea, and there's kind of a I guess a ceasefire in the trade war right now. And so we'll see what happens moving forward with this kind of one country has an advantage over another in another space, but where's that going to go? Okay, so there's formed I guess a loose confederation of AI blocks. So there's the democratic world, democratic free market societies, G7, led by the G7, other democratic countries. Hiroshima Process, Bletchley Park Initiative are those like-minded democratic countries. How are we going to develop AI safely, test it safely, and make sure that it's not, as maybe Dr. Strasser talked about, unethical, immoral. And then there's what's been dubbed the BRICS Plus coalition, led by China and to a lesser extent Russia. We need to catch up to the West. The West cannot dominate. Not only the West, but West and West Plus, like the other democratic countries like Japan, Korea, Australia, all those in out east. But China's been kind of with this initiative of saying, hey, the West is trying to monopolize, corner this market. We should have rights to AI as well. And so pushing for this South-South cooperation. The global South is just a loose term for countries that aren't developed. They could be in the Northern Hemisphere too, but a lot of them in their South. So maybe China, India, other southern countries need to work together and catch up to the West so they don't have a corner on the market of those NVIDIA type chips. So there is some sort of, not conflict, there's disagreements brewing that could lead to some sort of conflict where the US and the US-led democratic world does have that advantage in technology. China has that ace in the sleeve of they have all the stuff that you need to make those chips. And then there's a growing coalition of authoritarian countries coalescing behind China, much to the disadvantage of the long-standing US-led order that's been around since the end of World War II. Yeah, so what about escalation and deterrence? What can AI do for that? Will it lead to escalation? Does it make it more escalation-prone conflict? Or can it help with deterrence? Meaning, will it kind of balance things out where, the easiest type of deterrence that we're talking about is, the easiest one is nuclear deterrence. We have bombs, you have bombs. You shoot bomb at me, I shoot bomb at you, we're both dead. That's easy deterrence. Little more complicated when not everybody's going to die. And so that being said, what is a threshold of escalation maybe in an AI cyber domain and what's not? What might provoke a response from the US or China if they go at each other? But one thing that we're talking about here is that it's going to up the speed and the scale of attacks. AI-assisted cyber operations could overwhelm traditional defense mechanisms. I forgot who coined this, but it's a really good coin, and it applies to drones in Ukraine as well. What's called precise mass. Mass, in World War II, the Soviet Union lost 20 million people because they just kept throwing bodies at the Germans, but they ended up overwhelming them with that many bodies, but a lot of people died. Precise mass is you're allowed to have mass, but be more concentrated and hit the targets that you need to do without losing so many human lives. And so that's what drones have helped with in the Ukraine war, as well as possibly overwhelming cyber defenses if a cyber war were to break out. So we have this issue of autonomy. Can you keep a human in a loop to make sure it doesn't get out of control? And then, since it's so fast and so scaled, could there be unintended consequences that you can't really pull back from once the genie's out of the bottle? Another thing AI could probably assist in, the biggest problem we have in the cyber domain anyway is attributing to the initiator in a timely manner so you can respond in kind. Sometimes it could take weeks or months. AI could even muddle that process even more by hiding its tracks a lot better. And then, Dr. Strasser kind of got into that too. Should we just let the AI go at each other? And what are the costs there if there's not a human in the loop? So these are all just like, these are the questions being posed by people like me that we don't have the answers to yet, but we see this kind of manifesting in real time and really kind of worry about unintended consequences of developing AI. Okay, so how's China look at AI? And it's different from us. So loyalty, or the Chinese Communist Party is what matters more than China, the Chinese people, anything. It's loyalty to the party and not China. And it's Xi Jinping and his party's motive to just retain political power at all costs. AI's been insisting in that. You've probably heard of the social credit system there, how they've used AI in surveillance around all the cities in China, so you can get caught jaywalking and be instantly fined, things like that. So they've harnessed AI to build a better and more efficient authoritarian state, which helps the CCP stay in power. Xi Jinping, if you read some of the stuff, not only Xi Jinping writes, but a lot of I guess they are communist, Chinese academics write about other ways of governance. Democracy is messy. There's too many freedoms that causes all these crime problems here in the U.S. People being too free to do what they want causes chaos and not order, and that's why the Chinese model is better. So they view the U.S. as inferior. We're unscientific and flawed because of our way of life. They see themselves as superior. So surveillance, control, and internal military applications, that's what they're really concentrating on more than anything. But it's been very useful for them in preventing internal dissent through surveillance and control via smart cities as well as that social credit system. So yeah, it's to the party, the People's Liberation Army, it's to the Communist Party, not to China. So that's to ensure stable internal stability. And if there's a breakthrough in AI that a commercial entity comes out with, the Chinese state has the ability and the will to just say, hey, I'm going to take that and apply it for military applications, and you're going to agree to that or else. We can't do that here in the US. So they're using all state resources to achieve AI dominance. And that being said, these are the kind of resources, the kind of goals they have. In China, especially since Xi Jinping decided he doesn't want to serve his one-term 10-year limit. He's in his second tenure, and he's going to serve till life. He doesn't have to worry about getting booted out of power. Neither does Putin, even though they have elections. So they can think way far ahead in the future. Here in the U.S., it's 4 years, 8 years, 8 years max, right? Depending on the party and the president, and even the personality of the president, where we're going to go on our policy. So $27 billion by next year. That's likely underreported. Advocates integration of AI with the real economy. He wants AI to make the Chinese economy even more efficient, so it overtakes the U.S. A lot quicker. And then by 2030, that much money in core AI output, and even 1.38 trillion in AI-related industry output. They want to be the AI superpower, and they want to be the AI superpower tomorrow, not in 10 years, but by the end of this decade. All right, so there are commercial ambitions. There is in China, so it's hard for me to call China, in terms of what Karl Marx meant, a communist country anymore, because they have private industry. They have people are able to get rich, and people are able to innovate. But the Chinese Communist Party still has control over all of those entities. So military control for the Communist Party remains paramount. And what about the U.S.? The U.S. public, I don't know. I mean, we're paying attention to it because it's our job. U.S. public's really not paying that much attention. I think TikTok's the biggest, most successful backdoor China's ever deployed on us. They've got all the information of all our youth. That's a topic for another day. But we really haven't recognized how many chips the Chinese have pushed in for military AI innovation. That's their main focus. And what's the problem here in the U.S.? Many of those folks up there in Silicon Valley have a libertarian point of view. They view the U.S. government with suspicion. They don't like being told what to do by the government, obviously, and they value their own autonomy. And because they're global, like Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, they don't see themselves as necessarily American, but global. And so they have trouble being more nationalistic about their technology. So they have flexible national loyalties, and that's been much to the chagrin of the DC area. So one thing that we all like here in the US is the free market. So that does drive AI development with the motive being maximizing profits. With competition and innovation, that usually makes the best product. And so that's what we hope will happen with the United States vis-a-vis its competition with China. 80% of US AI R&D is funded by the private sector, not the government. It used to be the flip side. It used to be like during World War II, in the aftermath, the government pushed all the money into this kind of technology development to beat the Soviets. That's since been flipped since the end of the Cold War. So your primary incentive is commercial profit through personalized ads. That's how Mark Zuckerberg is very rich. He uses you're the product for his advertising that people pay big money for. And then even using AI to reduce labor costs by making labor obsolete and replacing it with AI. And so they have fewer motives to be pro-America necessarily. They're more pro-dollar, right? And Europe's a lucrative market. China's a lucrative market. So staying loyal to the US is something that we maybe need to work on. Another thing is we're a free society. Government cannot force companies to share IP or cooperate. It's intellectual property is IP, I'm sorry. Or cooperate with the government. It has to be voluntary. Part of the free market business ecosystem. There is interest in AI by the DoD. I think we're getting there, but it's a slow beast to move this big thing called the DoD. But it's secondary to commercial environment. Put that on the flip side to China. Military is there front and center. Ours is commercial development and profit. And for the most part, defense-related AI work is unattractive to firms because it's low volume, it's highly regulated, and it doesn't profit that much. So they'd rather do other stuff. But there have been some takers. One company that's all in on this kind of stuff is Palantir. Palantir's been kind of really big for the development of AI within the military. Yeah, and so some defense leaders, there's that's Mr. Silicon Valley, right? Encourage Silicon Valley participation, long-term profit appeals. Hey, eventually you'll make money. We're the DoD. We have big budgets, and then can we appeal to them patriotically? Do it for America. Because we did have that in World War II. Like Ford and Boeing, they all signed up because they wanted to beat the enemy. Google's been one of those big resistant companies. Global identity, Google sees themselves as a global entity, not necessarily an American one. And then with Project Maven, which we're going to get to in a minute, that was actually canceled by Google in 2018 because of all the protests within the Google employees. They didn't want AI used for killing. We lack legal mechanisms to compel cooperation between DoD and industry, and if we did pass laws, I don't know if they would come willingly. I think there might be a lot of pushback on that. Eric Schmidt, which used to be the CEO of Google, really promotes more DoD collaboration, as does Peter Thiel of Palantir. And then what's that guy who wears the Hawaiian shirts all the time? He's been really into that too. I forgot his name.
The CEO of Anduril?
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, Parker somebody, I think. But he always wears the Hawaiian shirts and flip-flops. Yeah, yeah, that's it. I knew it was kind of a strange name. He's obviously all in as well. All right, so Project Maven, Palantir's renamed it Tron. Palantir took over this project from Google. It was called Project Maven under Google. But what it was meant for was a lot of what we're seeing in Ukraine, but for the US. Object detection and classification in full motion video collected by drones. You teach the AI, so AI is only as smart as you make it. It's the data you feed it. So it's not all-knowing. There's no sentient AI brain yet. There's no Terminator. It's just algorithms, and the one with the better algorithms wins the game. That's another thing I didn't touch on though, but AI can also be poisoned. Like China can hack into our AI and feed it bad information so it makes suboptimal decisions and gives them the advantage. So that's something we always need to look out for as well. But if given the right information, this could be really useful for the military, reducing the workload on human analysts, spend hours manually scanning drone footage. That could help the CIA out a lot. And then with decision makers, with those who have to make the life or death decisions, hopefully it could speed up their decisions and have them make decisions that lead to fewer casualties, but achieve their objectives at the same time. So this served as a pilot program for wider AI integration across the DoD, and it has sparked interest, and I think that we're on the right track. I just hope we can speed this process up because China's really going at it right now. So machine learning algorithms trained on large data sets of labeled images. The problem is, can you teach it the ability to say that's an American tank, that's a Russian tank, that's a Chinese tank, that's a Ukrainian dude, that's a Russian dude. These are all kind of things that are hard to kind of teach a machine to differentiate, right? So yeah, identifying vehicles, peoples, buildings, and real-time drone footage. That's why, in my opinion, there's always needs to be a human in the loop to make the human decisions about this. The problem is, we might have those ethics here in the U.S. I know Dr. Strasser's talked about that, but I don't think China and Russia would. And would that give them an advantage? As you can see, Russia doesn't care about civilian casualties or their own casualties for that matter. So authoritarians might have a higher bar on casualties than we do. So intelligence gathering, mission planning, targeting, very useful. But should it be the be-all, end-all? Should Colonel Kurtz, I'm sorry, that's the only colonel's name that popped in my head, be over-dependent on AI? Or should his decision-making as a human being be front and center, and AI is just kind of helping him make the decisions he needs to make? All right, so yeah, Google, they have a certain culture in Google that's not very pro-DoD, but they have a lot of really cool technology. So DoD the DoD saw it as a success, but thousands of Google employees signed a petition, ethical concerns over using AI for warfare, didn't want to contribute to lethal autonomous weapons in the future. So they didn't renew its contract with the DoD in 2018. Palantir has since taken up the mantle, and it's called Tron. So even though Google said we can't do this anymore, the DoD saw it as a success, and they want more. And so that's where we're going right now. And the president's new AI executive order, it's like 20 pages long if you want to read it. It's kind of taken the shackles off in terms of regulations, in terms of developing AI for the military. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but that's what it's done. Whereas the previous administrations was more regulatory. So we'll see what happens there. Project Maven did lead to a joint entity, Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, JAC, which I think is in Pentagon Central, but I'm not sure. So this marked a turning point in the relationship between tech firms and the military, meaning that tech firms saw profitability in military AI. And so we have turned the corner on that. There's only certain companies, though. Google's out, obviously. Microsoft's kind of in. Palantir's all in. OpenAI just signed something with the DoD. I'm not sure how far that goes or not. And then Elon with his companies, obviously he's in on that too. SpaceX being a big part of using AI from space, right? All right, so that's, oh wow, I timed it pretty well. These are just questions in case you don't have questions of your own. These are just thinkers. I'll stop here and take questions from you, but then we can answer some of these questions because I think they're kind of overarching and good for discussion. But that's one of the things that I'm interested in, and your thoughts is, who has the advantage given our societal makeup in the US versus China? Does China have that advantage because they can just tell people what to do? Or does that stymie innovation because it instills fear? Whereas here it's willing, but the free market incentivizes better innovation. And now that we have some companies saying, okay, DoD will work with you, maybe that will give us advantage US. These are just things I'm throwing out there. So that's all I have for content. The rest we can devote to talking about this kind of stuff. So what do you guys think?